Welcome back, guys. This is Schauer Thoughts with Sarah Schauer, a podcast for left and right brainers. Now, one side of your brain is not more logical than, it's not, the logical creative side has been debunked, but, they're different. It's a whole thing. But left and right brainers, if you're more logical creative, even if that whole thing has been, you know what? In a future episode, I'll explain how it's been basically debunked and explain what it means. But if you have a brain stem, a central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, if you've got a lot of nerve, if you've ever been electrocuted, actually, if you've ever been shocked, because fun fact, if you've been electrocuted, that means you've died. So actually, I am super into near-death experience. I have so many podcast episode topics I want to do, and I feel like one day I'll do my full how I think about near-death experiences. The thing is it's a whole lot of physics. Maybe I'll make a Patreon, and then I'll do this is my whole theory behind near-death experiences. But what are we talking about today? We are talking about how to study. Now, a lot of people think they know how to study. You kind of do, but the American school system more threw you into it, but didn't explain, and also they kind of did not optimize the way that they taught people to learn. And the thing is teachers, if you're listening, I do not blame you by any means. You are also a product of, if you're an American, the American school system, or, it's just more rote learning and memorization, which is not super helpful when it comes to inductive and deductive reasoning and just, a lot of scattered information and, how we study. But I also have to apologize to everyone. This episode is going to come out after finals are over. And I know because I posted this on my Instagram story because I was super excited writing this. And a bunch of people were like, oh, when is it coming out? Because I have finals next week. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. This will not help you at all. It is. But if it makes you feel any better, if anyone fails their finals here, I didn't finish college because last semester had a complete and utter mental breakdown, didn't show up to any of my finals, and so grades were submitted after the graduation ceremony, so I got to walk and my parents got to take the pictures. Did I pass? No. So I'm not saying that you'll fail. I'm saying that if you do, you're in good company. If you define me as a good person, I don't know. But before we get into the shower, what has happened this week? If you guys are watching on YouTube, I have dyed my hair from a light brown to a dark brown. I know, wild, but I haven't dyed my hair in 5 years. I think since the beginning of the pandemic, just because I was like, you know what? I've been dyeing my hair for my entire life, getting highlights. I had red hair for a long time. Some of you have been following me for a long time. So I've gone through, the more general colors. I've never done any sort of, more vivid colors like blue or green, just because the thing is, I know myself, I would not maintain it. A lot of people suggest bangs, and the thing is I feel like I could pull off a multitude of hairstyles, but when it comes to, realistically, would I put in the effort? No. So it was nice kind of just growing out my hair, and yeah, now it's darker. It looks really nice. I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to talk about how to study. Now, this comes after I did not know these techniques when I was in college, because I mean, the thing is I was okay academically in college. Now, I will say towards the end, I was developing an issue with alcohol. So that definitely impaired my functioning cognitively, emotionally, reasoning ability pretty much out the window. Like I said, the alcohol problem had been going for, it's a whole thing. But now I do know how to study. Technically, I guess this could be like research or even just straight up reading. A lot of people don't like studying. They don't like learning. They don't like reading. And the thing is I know what you mean. It's most likely, though, however, due to the school system. Because here's the thing. I will get into it. But I did a couple episodes ago why I don't think bad should be on the emotion wheel. However, it is on the emotion wheel. And the thing is bad on the emotion wheel, if you look at the secondary and tertiary rows of the emotion wheel, all those emotions allude to fatigue, right? And so the thing is a lot of people feel ashamed because of how they did academically. Now, shame and bad are two different things. Shame is, is a moralized term, but bad is a moralized term. However, bad on the emotion wheel alludes to fatigue. So, knowledge is heavy, right? If you went to school and you studied and learned for about 8 hours a day, I will translate this, but you get fatigued mentally. So you feel, quote unquote, bad, right? However, grading, pass, fail, good, bad is a different type of bad. And if you were doing, like you weren't doing well in school, and then you were tired on top of that, you're now fusing morality and fatigue. And that's how capitalism has worked its way into the school system, right? You assume that if you're tired, you are morally bad, right? Because they paired it with grades. And so you pair a sensation with like a lesson, right? So you kind of assume that you are shameful. You hate school. No, you got two things that were not related fused together, your worth and your energy levels. And so the thing is they do that on purpose, right? That's why now when you lay down, you feel bad, you feel lazy, right? However, morally bad is like someone who does something wrong, like shameful or guilt. And I discussed that in a couple podcast episodes now, but the American school system basically, is just capitalism, make better workers. And so like you teach people to be ashamed because they feel tired, and now they're going to push themselves, and you're burnt out listening to this at your job. And I'm deeply sorry for that. So I understand if you don't like the education system and how it made you feel. I'd like to reframe this so learning and studying is fun, easier to do. All right. So I will be reading from an article. It's Mastering the Art of Studying, Effective Study Methods for Success. Now, this entire article I'm going to read, but I'm going to break down the bullet points for how they work and why they work for different study techniques and advice. So all these resources will be linked below. So if you need them, they will all be linked below. Okay. In today's competitive academic landscape, students often face a mountain of information to process and retain. This can lead to feelings of overwhelm and frustration, making it even more essential to adopt effective study methods to achieve academic success. At Tutors SA, we believe that every student possesses the potential for greatness. That's why we've compiled a comprehensive guide to mastering the art of studying through proven and effective study methods. Now, I didn't really have any study methods in college other than, I got prescribed Adderall, and that realizing I had ADHD was probably, a godsend. I could not focus for the life of me. And then I realized, I have a actual thing. This is where, but the thing is my doctor was at the VA, which is the veterans, because my parents are in the military. And this is where I worry about active duty military members. When I got prescribed Adderall, a controlled substance, which you get in 1 month increments, right? Like 30 to, I would get 3 months supply and then 6 months supply of Adderall in one container. Now, Adderall can be sold for money, but the thing is the military, what's up with that? You gave me like basically 90 Adderall each time I went. And things, but let's not judge. We all do, so it's fine. But I do have ADHD. Anyone here have an issue with the VA? Leave a comment. Okay. Study Methods 101. Whilst it may be assumed everyone knows how to study, it could not be further from the truth. Amen. Studying is a skill. Amen. That is practiced and mastered over time. Understanding how to study transforms the way you take it in, process, and use the information being turned into knowledge. With the right guidance, learning how to study can be easier than it seems, and one carries an invaluable skill into other. Yeah. The right tutor can make a difference. I consider myself more of a tutor because some of you will come on here and you're like, you're teaching me so much. I am not teaching you. And the thing is most of you already know, you have the parts, right? Like life has given you all these experiences. You understand what bad, sad, and mad are. The thing is I am assembling it, right? I'm giving you directions. And or I'm like a spotter at the gym. I'm like a tutor or a spotter. I'm not really saying anything new. I'm reframing it or helping you like rebuild something because you've kind of like put the pieces together a bit wonky and now the structure can't support you. But yeah, and that's just my lesbianism. Because I'm like, yeah, you built that wrong. No. We gotta start. Let's do it from the top. All right. So studying, like I said, is a skill. It must be practiced and mastered. Knowledge is heavy, dense. So this entire thing, again, is going to be I'm going to make a similar point to like weightlifting and powerlifting. So since knowledge is dense, you need to build your muscles to get to, powerlifting competitive levels. And so take in, process, and use information that leads to knowledge. Take in, process, and use information are three separate tasks, though, for your brain. So this is a skill, but these are like, different sets of skills, and I'm going to break it down. So the first one says, optimize your study environment. The space in which one studies makes all the difference by creating a conductive, right? Electrically charged. Okay. Study environment. You take the first step that is essential for effective learning. Ensure to find a quiet space that is well ventilated and well lit with minimal distractions, etc. so forth. Okay. By creating a conducive study environment, right? So when you concentrate, all your power is going to like focusing on something, paying attention, right? So conducive, your environment can affect, how you feel. And so this is where I like to bring in different groups of people who shine a light on this. Okay. So emotions motivate actions, right? Studying is an action. Your environment can influence your emotions heavily, right? So if you're overstimulated, you turn down the lights, you turn up the AC, you minimize sounds, weighted blankets for consistent pressure, okay? And no touching of specific spots, okay? Stimming also helps release energy. So the thing is I read Undoing Drugs a while back, and this is where people with psychedelics, they love you. They were, studying methods of like harm reduction, and it was kind of interesting because all of these, researchers and doctors came together to like talk about drugs and like harm reduction. And it seems like the researchers who studied psychedelics every time would just appear. They were never consistently in the book. They would just show up at a conference, say one incredibly illuminating thought, and then kind of just disappear, which I thought was so funny. But people who take psychedelics and psychedelic researchers said, have you ever noticed that the environment you take your drugs in makes or breaks your high? And so everyone was like, wait a second. Absolutely. And so like when it comes to harm reduction and like recovery, you want to help someone get housing, because using on the street versus in a house, experience vastly, vastly different. Okay. So thank you, psychedelic researchers, for appearing out of nowhere. And now housing is a huge thing in harm reduction, thanks to people who study psychedelics. So optimize your study environment. And so I have this additional article. Does classroom temperature affect student learning and achievement? A 2014 study demonstrated in both excessively cold and hot temperatures directly affect students' learning abilities. High school students scored an average of 76% when it was 61 degrees Fahrenheit. That is cold. Oh my God. And did worse when it was 81 degrees Fahrenheit. What? Scoring an average of 72%. When it was 72 degrees, what most people would consider a comfortable temperature, students' average scores went up to 90%. Okay, I feel like this experiment may have been unethical. You make kids take a test in 61 degrees and then 81 degrees. Also, though, I feel like the time I did take my SAT, I didn't really finish it because I had a tummy ache, but it was incredibly cold in there, and I think that was incredibly distracting. The researchers noted that when the body is subjected to thermal discomfort, a person's brain will be distracted by signals from the body. When you're in an environment that's hot or cold, maintaining homeostasis becomes your mind and body's priority, making it harder to concentrate on schoolwork. Yes, if your body is shutting down or overheating, that is going to be your main concern. Anyone get dressed up for a night out, right? And you just got ready and then your outfit's a little bit too tight and it's a little bit too warm in the room. That could that it destroys you, right? But then also people who've worked in an ice cold office building, you know, you have like a space heater in the middle of July and they're like wondering why you can't work well. It's like, well, we have hypothermia. So around 72 degrees external temperature, okay? So, guys, when it comes to helping children in schools, an adequate HVAC system is an absolute necessity, okay? We need heating and cooling in schools. It's incredibly important. Additionally, this is external temperature. Like I said a couple podcast episodes ago, the hypothalamus is your body's thermostat. It regulates temperature from internal and external sources. So we're going to get into physiology and temperature regulation internally, okay? You can also, you have to consider external study environment, get around, 72 degrees, and then internally, okay, this is also linked below. Thermoregulation is the maintenance of physiologic core body temperature by balancing heat generation with heat loss. A healthy individual will have a core body temperature of 37 plus or minus 0.5 degrees Celsius, which is 98.6 plus or minus 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit. So 98.6, guys, around that area. The temperature range needed for the body's metabolic process to function correctly. The human body's thermostat is the hypothalamic thermoregulatory center, which more specifically is located in the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. This center sets the body's set point and regulates temperature homeostasis. The hypothalamus contains temperature sensors, which receive information via nerve cells called thermoreceptors. The body has peripheral and central thermoreceptors. Okay, so you have the central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is brain and brain stem, and then the nerves that go off from that is your peripheral nervous system, okay? The peripheral thermoreceptors are located in the skin and sense surface temperatures, while central thermoreceptors are found in the viscera, spinal cord, and hypothalamus and sense the core temperature. So viscera is your organs, okay? Like I said, when you're in the summer playing outside and then your mom made hot soup and it was like she's torturing you. It's because, she basically cranked up the heat a couple more degrees. So she's baking you from the inside. Variations in body temperature activate these thermoreceptors, which inform the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. This area then activates heat regulation mechanisms to increase or decrease body temperature and return it to its baseline. So, adequate diet before you study is like adequate diet before you work out. You also need protein to study. Protein is not just for gym bros. And the thing is I've said this, your brain is not a muscle. It's, fat, salts, water, glial cells. It's not a muscle, but it can be trained like a muscle, right? And so you absolutely need protein if you're going to be studying, okay? So while I say that, I'm going to give some nuance because we will be talking about food, and I don't really feel comfortable advising you all on specific diet, like which foods to eat. So I'm going to say, like, your brain needs proteins, amino acids, okay? For cognitive performance, stress, and brain functioning. Please eat before you study. Make sure to regularly refuel if you're studying for long hours, okay? And the thing is a lot of people will, like, sit down and study for like 4+ hours. And if you think about, like, if you were to go to the gym for 4 hours, you would hope, runners have this down. You know how runners, when they're like on a really long haul run, they'll have like a gel or like some pack of something to like keep them going. Honestly, if you have like things like that when you're studying as well, because your brain does burn calories, it is 2% of your body weight, but it takes in, I think, like, you know what, I'll get to that. But you should have protein always. If you don't eat before you study, it's like not eating before you work out. You're not going to lift as heavy. You're not going to study as hard. Okay. Oh, I am though. Fun recommendation for people who want to read a book with me. This is more like it's not like it's called The Science of Nutrition. I'm going to show you. The Science of Nutrition. Do you know how hard it is to find a book on nutrition, just like the basics, without it having to do with something like fad dieting? But it is so fun. I kind of just read like a page a day, and I like make fun little notes. It talks about like macronutrients, micronutrients, And then, what are carbohydrates, what is protein, and it just like breaks it down to a very granular level. And like what is fat, what are vitamins. And this is just great for anyone who, I guess my mom was a doctor. She wasn't an almond mom, but she was always like trying to make weight because she was in the military. So like I did sometimes go to Weight Watchers, but I didn't, she wasn't like super like a lot of pressure on me. But if you had like a very rocky intro to nutrition when you were growing up, this is just a great book, The Science of Nutrition. And it's like super easy to understand, is it okay to skip meals? What other nutrients? And so that's the extent of my nutrition. I just don't want to mention a certain food and then you'd be like, well, I don't have access to this food, especially with, Trump's tariffs. And so I don't want to tell you exactly what you need to eat. But if you get this book and you're like, oh, these certain foods are not available in my area, but there's like alternatives listed. And so it's very helpful. And it's also just super insightful. I'm 30 and I should know about nutrition in my body, and it's just a great book. And again, that will be linked below. Oh, I love books. They're so fun. Yeah. So you need food to study. It's like, you need food to work out. It's like you need food. I mean, your car doesn't need food, but your car needs gas to get places. And if it stalls and runs out of gas and you're like, why can't it keep going? AKA, you can't keep studying. It's because you need more fuel. Okay. So I'm going to get into, this is still number 1 because I wanted to explain all the points. So amino acid and protein requirements, cognitive performance, stress, and brain function. I will give a tiny little abridged. So maintenance of appropriate plasma concentration of at least one amino acid. Tryptophan. Tryptophan is that fun little thing that everyone, like you eat a whole bunch of food on Thanksgiving and you feel like so tired you can't move. It's because of the tryptophan. Okay. The precursor of serotonin, tryptophan precursor of serotonin, is essential for optimal brain function and cognitive performance. Substantial decreases or increases in the typical levels of tryptophan present in the plasma will substantially disrupt normal behavior and brain function. Reduced plasma tryptophan increases depression and aggression, while increase in this amino acid induce drowsiness and decrease pain sensitivity. So yeah, if you eat a lot during Thanksgiving because of the tryptophan, you will be drowsy, but also less sensitive to pain. So if someone wants to start any sort of political fight in your household and you've just eaten a lot of tryptophan, I'd say fist fight. You're not going to feel it as hard. So the optimal range for plasma and brain tryptophan levels has not been established in human or any other species, nor has the daily requirement for this amino acid been determined with respect to its effects on brain function. Anyway, so tryptophan precursor for serotonin. And this is so fun. Sidebar, my name is Sarah. Serotonin. And then I have a cat named Dopey, dopamine. And then I have a girl cat. Her name is Georgia, but I call her Jaja, like GABA. Okay, so we're all like neurotransmitters in my house. It's just so fun. And the thing is okay, I'll keep going. Yeah, so there are also, like I said a couple times in the previous episodes, there are serotonin receptors in your tummy. And you're like, this is a really, really granular breakdown because some of you need it top down, bottom up. We need to hit it from all sides. I want to explain why you really need to eat before you study. So serotonin is the feel-good chemical. Serotonin is a chemical that carries messages between nerve cells in the brain and throughout your body. Serotonin plays a key role in body functions as mood, sleep, digestion, nausea, wound healing, bone health, blood clotting, and sexual desire. Yes. As a neurotransmitter, serotonin carries messages between your nerve cells in your brain, your central nervous system, and throughout your body, your peripheral nervous system. These chemical messages tell your body how to work. Serotonin plays several roles in your body, including influencing learning, memory, happiness, as well as regulating body temperature. Okay? So tryptophan, serotonin, you really need it if you want learning, memory, regulate your body temperature. Regulate your body temperature in order to learn, because if you're too cold, too hot, then that's going to be all you focus on. It also helps with sleep, sexual behavior, and hunger. Lack of enough serotonin is thought to play a role in depression, anxiety, mania, and other health conditions. Most of the serotonin found in your body is in your gut. intestines, okay? About 90% of serotonin is found in the cells lining your gastrointestinal tract. It is released into your blood circulation and absorbed by platelets. Only about 10% is produced in your brain, okay? So the feel-good chemical, 90%, comes from your gut, okay? So if you want to feel good, confident, feel like the studying is rewarding, you're understanding it, you're making meaning, you're making progress, right? You're going to need some food in your tummy. All of this will be linked because I, again, don't feel comfortable telling you exactly which foods. I don't know if anyone has any allergies, and I don't want you to take the exact food that I mentioned and you run with it and then, something. But yeah, you need serotonin, and most of it is made in your gut, okay? So serotonin is made from the essential amino acid tryptophan. Yep, an essential amino acid means it can't be made by your body, so you have to ingest it. It has to be obtained from other foods you eat. And oh my God, it's like the science of nutrition will tell you where you can get some tryptophan from, and the thing is this is not sponsored by that book. If they would like to, that'd be great. I would have to, what? I don't know. If they're listening, I don't know if I should be your best, book representative, but it's a really great, it explains where you can get these sort of things. For more information on serotonin, please visit the resources linked below. It's labeled serotonin again. Yeah. So then 2, we're going back to the tutor, the tutor, love learning, inspire excellence. Create a study schedule. One of the most crucial aspects of successful studying is creating a well-planned and well-structured study schedule. Ensure to allocate specific time slots. Yep. I will also link this entire thing. And so let me explain to you why this is great. So create a study schedule. Just like going to the gym, you need to, go to the gym a certain amount of times each week to build, but more importantly, maintain the muscle so you can continue to build strength, mental ability. So if you need a consistent study routine, I know that you could just do it like the night before a big test, but again, that would be like, someone doing like all their training for a bodybuilding competition the night before the competition. And I think any bodybuilders, any powerlifters here would be like, that is ridiculous. Yeah. So the same thing is your brain, right? Like you need repetition is the key to learning. It's also the key to maintaining and your wrinkles aren't like definition, but a good wrinkly brain is, good. So you have to build this skill. You're building upon, you got to maintain it as well. So you need to create a schedule that works for you. I personally every morning like to read for a couple hours and annotate. Sometimes on my weekends, since I largely don't go out much, I like to, go through when I have like a legal notepad and just make some notes. And it's also just fun. But I think, I guess I'm technically studying. I'm more learning so I can share with you all. Ooh, this one I'm also so excited for. So number 3. Utilize mind mapping. When it comes to effective study methods, using mind maps is a favorite for many students. Okay, one second. Mind maps offer elements that appeal to the logical and creative parts of the mind. Ooh, like I said in the beginning, you guys are like, why are you saying ooh? I'm just so excited because I also brought a book for this. Okay. So it's a best of both worlds solution that works for just about every subject and topic with an excellent visual tool for organizing information and understanding complex relationships between different concepts. Knowledge becomes easier to navigate, learn, and take it in. You guys don't understand how important mind mapping is and what I'm about to say and what I just read. Okay. So mind mapping, like I said, offers elements that appeal to the logical and creative parts of the brain. So I do have a book recommendation that will be linked below. It's called Mind Mapping, Improve Memory, Concentration, Communication, Organization, Creativity, and Time Management. It's by Cam Knight. All right. And so what it discusses, for example, in this book is associations. Every new thought or idea your brain has or learns needs to connect to other thoughts and ideas. When you learn a new piece of information, that fact doesn't aimlessly float around in your head. Instead, it attaches itself to something else. This is the way the brain works, by connecting thoughts, ideas, and experiences to other thoughts, ideas, and experiences. Each thought or idea in your head has hundreds of thousands of links, okay? So the thing is in the traditional school system, right, like you kind of memorize different chunks, And so some of the chunks of information are connected, but a lot of times you're not sure how they're connected, right? Especially if you're a bottom-up processor, you don't understand the granular aspects of it. And so with mind mapping, it really, really helps because, okay, like, your brain needs like logical structure. It needs to know how to follow directions, right? Like if you got an IKEA manual and, it gave you steps 1 through 15, and then it jumped to 33, and then it jumped to 57. So mind mapping helps you, follow all the things that you're learning because, okay, wait. Associations and learning is necessary for inductive and deductive reasoning. It builds. Now, everyone who's neurodivergent and everyone who's neurotypical, this is where I want you all to come in, okay? My neurodivergent babies, my bottom-up thinkers, you usually use inductive reasoning, moving from specific to general. My neurotypical children, my top-down thinkers, you usually use deductive reasoning, moving from general to specific. So I'm about to explain a whole bunch of translation errors. This is where translation errors happen between neurodivergent people and neurotypical people. You are approaching the same location from different directions. Neurotypical people are traveling southbound. Neurodivergent people are traveling northbound, but you're trying to get to the same location. Now, okay, the issue is neurotypical people assume you're on the same stretch of road as them, right? They assume that you're going southbound as well. No, you're going northbound, right? You're both heading to the same location in the middle, but they are going south and you are going north, okay? So you're approaching from the south going north and they're approaching from the north going south, okay? So a lot of times neurotypical people will get frustrated because they describe what's in their vicinity, what's in the logical vicinity of where they're traveling, right? And they're like, oh, you don't see this mile marker here? Or you don't understand, like, the thing is it's basically like neurodivergent people got to take the Jersey Turnpike into New York. However, neurotypical people are coming from upstate. And so neurodivergent people are like, where on the turnpike are you? And then neurotypical people are like, well, we don't have to go on the turnpike. You guys are ridiculous, like idiot buffoons. And so we are kind of conditioned to believe that we are. No, we're approaching from different directions. Okay? So, yeah. So the reason why also you guys like the way I speak is because I am at the location, right? I'm giving directions to both neurodivergent and neurotypical people at the same time, right? I'm talking about like cliches, overarching ideas, but I'm also breaking down the granular aspects, which means I'm both approaching from the south and the north at the same time. That's why you guys like how I'm speaking. So this is where everyone who tries to replicate how I speak messes up, even though anyone can speak like this. My goal is not to be right, okay? If my goal was to be right when I'm speaking, that would mean that I'm trying to convince you guys of my point of view, right? That means that I am trying to make you all see the stretch of road that I am traveling on. No, what I want to do is I want to be clear, okay? Transparent. I want you to be able to not see through me, but with what I'm saying, you can see in the direction that you're going, like what I mean, which means I have to just describe, the general concept. Like I'm at the location. My goal is to be clear, transparent, right? Factual, and then make sure I'm giving directions from north and southbound. A lot of people want to be right, which means that they themselves are on a stretch of road heading to a location, okay? Okay. I do also, for neurodivergent people, I know that you're going to want to read this. I do have more info on inductive versus deductive reasoning, and alongside of that, like add this to your list of things that why neurotypical people can't understand us. They're using different types of reasoning. That's going to be linked, and then add that to your list with concrete versus abstract thinking. Neurotypical people are largely abstract. We're largely concrete. And so, yeah, that's another thing. If you have some free time, you don't have to study this. I just know that neurodivergent people love resources and, learning why people don't understand us. This is an acquired skill. My communication style, this is not natural at all. A lot of people are like, I like the way this is learned through force, right? Because you know when a lot of people misinterpret you throughout the entirety of your life, you're like, surely I'm not. Am I speaking gibberish? And it's like, no, everyone is approaching from a different direction. And direction does matter. And I'm going to circle back to mind mapping and why it's so important. Let me drink some water. Let me also explain how and why mind mapping is so effective. Maps, all right? Like I said a long time ago, spatial awareness and memory both happen in the hippocampus, okay? The human hippocampus and spatial and episodic memory. Finding one's way around an environment and remembering the events that occur within it are crucial cognitive abilities that have been linked to the hippocampus and medial temporal lobes. Our review of neuropsychological, behavioral, and neuroimaging studies of human hippocampal involvement in spatial memory concentrates on 3 important concepts in this field: spatial frameworks, dimensionality, and orientation, and self-motion. Okay? I want you guys to think about what I always place emphasis on when I talk about emotions. This is just how I use this, because I use this all the time, right? When I talk about emotions, happiness, love, draws you towards, okay? I am trying to emphasize a direction of movement, right? Disgust, fear repels. So it moves you back. I talked about in a previous episode, XY axis, how you can start to graph emotions. Okay, social emotions, for example, are hierarchical, right? Which means there's up, down movement, okay? And then, so when it comes to emotions that just kind of connect or repel, right? Like love or, disgust, which like repels you away from. Those are like more towards, away, up, down, okay? And then acceptance is dead center. It is stillness. It is unmoving. It is the only emotion. That and its kind of sister, which is indifference. They're like fraternal twins. I don't know how to explain it, but actually I do, but not right now. So their acceptance and indifference are like dead center. If this goes to collectivist emotions, it does actually, the math gets more complicated. But the thing is I was talking about this, for example, I'm going to do a full episode on the difference between pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion, all right? Pity, sympathy, empathy are under the compassion umbrella, okay? And so sympathy is basically pity. However, pity is something that you only can receive from someone you perceive as above you, okay? So that means empathy is a social emotion, which means there's up-down movement. So you can only receive pity from someone if you perceive them as above you, right? If you see them as your equal, you will perceive it as sympathy, actually, okay? And so the thing is, a lot of autistic people, when we go to empathize with people, we empathize first because we perceive these people, that we see them as hurt, right? And we want to, our first reaction is to share a common experience. Oh, let's connect, I want to empathize. You're talking about a sad story. I want to talk about a sad story. And the intention is to connect. However, connection is a toward or away movement. And now empathy also involves up-down movement. So if this person is hurt, they have been knocked down a peg. So they perceive themselves as beneath even their friends, right? So if we go to connect, right, and we're talking about our experiences and we're giving advice while this person is in their mind beneath us, even if we don't perceive it that way, right? They take it as we're pitying them, No, we're not accounting for the up-down movement. So what we need to do before we tell them, we try to connect with them and share the story, and then also giving advice. When you give advice, it comes off as instruction. The only person who can give instruction is a teacher, which reinforces our position as above them. And so they feel as if they're being pitied, it's just all about you now. Even though that's not our intent, and I totally understand that. So how to fix this, and because we have an issue with social emotions, empathy, pride, guilt, shame, all these things. Those are hierarchical emotions, and they involve others, so it makes sense. I'm not saying that we're bad. I'm saying that when a neurotypical person is hurting, right, we may want to connect with them and share. We need to account for how they perceive themselves, because they feel knocked down a peg, right? So we listen to them, and we give nods, right? We totally take it in, we consider it, and then when they feel like and I don't say this in a demeaning way, when their ego has been restored, it's not bad to have an ego, it's just, it could be back to, center, right? If they're knocked down a peg, it could be like their ego is just on the floor, and so they're just trying to get back to center. Let them go back to the level that they were operating at, and then that's when you share similar stories, okay? So why I'm saying this, right, is I always like to emphasize direction something is going. Again, example, grief is not linear. And I know grief is not linear because I study emotions, but also if you look at the grief curve, right, there's different ways you can grieve. But it starts off with shock, denial, anger, which goes down. Bargaining is the longest phase. Bargaining is when you're at your lowest, right? And then you start to go up when you're depressed, and then you accept it. If you were to look at that on a graph, that is not linear, okay? Emotions move certain directions, okay? And why they get so much easier to understand, why you understand disgust more, is because I placed an emphasis on repelling, right? You imagine me pushing you away. And so spatial awareness and memory are located in the hippocampus, right? When you are instructing, when you give directions, right, it is so good to emphasize, to notice when someone says something is forward, back, right, like turned around, up, down, because now you can kind of like orient yourself and the concept in your brain, right? Okay, so I'm going to keep going. We also compare variation in hippocampal structure and function across and within spaces. We discussed how its spatial role relates to its accepted role in episodic memory. 5 related studies use virtual reality to examine these 2 types of memory in ecologically valid situations. While processing a spatial scene involves the parahippocampus, the right hippocampus appears particularly involved in memory for location within the environment, right? So you, as you exist in the world, right? So your location, and then with the left hippocampus more involved in context-dependent episodic or autobiographical memory. So I know you're like, this is a lot. There is now a consensus that the human hippocampus is involved in episodic memory, i.e., memory from personally experienced events set in a spatio-temporal context. Spatio-temporal context means the consideration of the context in which learning occurs that reflects both the place, space, and the time sequence, temporal aspect of the learning event. So, if you want to understand things better, right? The space, the direction of things, right? So like usually in history is like the only time we really practice this skill of like literal mapping, because it goes through like, what started first in history and then what came after that and what came after that. However, those are just kind of straight lines, so they don't really like help us memorize. There's nothing really branching off, okay? And so the mind mapping will help you when you're studying something. You will notice in every single subject, right? Anytime they say this follows, right, or this is under, or this is a type of, mind mapping will help you literally map it out. And once you understand how all the concepts link together in terms of space, right, like this is a chunk of information. This is all like, basically you can write out directions with an image, okay? And so now you can understand the concept better because you can build off of it. You know what connects to what, right? And it kind of has a shape in your mind, okay? So where and when you learn matters. And then also, where you are in the sequence of the learning event. So like repeated, right? So you understand where it is, literally, and how all of the things connect together, right? Oh, this emotion moves you towards, and this moves you away. So if you were listening to everything I ever said about emotions, right? And I emphasize every single time, I know I did, like their direction of movement, you could plot where certain emotions would lie, okay? With acceptance, indifference being dead center, okay? And then you can see that some emotions, like anger, happiness must be pursued. Why it must be pursued is that it involves movement, okay? And so anger is action, right? It fuels, it moves you. So a lot of, so if you want to travel between certain emotions, you're most likely going to need shock, anger, or happiness to get there because those are your moving emotions, all right? Sadness and fear anchor, right? Okay? This is great. I love math. I'm hoping that you guys understand what I mean by like studying. Mind mapping, it's incredibly short as well. It is really helpful because it gives a visual guide, okay? Okay. So there's another part of this that says embrace multisensory learning, and that should be a continuation of mind mapping, because let me read this. So if you look at the above mind map in this book, more or less, it's an image processed by the same mechanisms that process sight. And the parts of the brain that process sight are much quicker and more powerful than the parts that process other types of information. Not only are images quicker to process, but they are easier to remember. Dr. Linnell Burmark, an education consultant who writes and speaks about visual literacy, says, unless our words, concepts, ideas are hooked onto an image, they will go in one ear and sail through the brain and go out the other. Words are processed by our short-term memory, where we can only retain about 7 bits of information, plus or minus 2. Images, on the other hand, go directly into long-term memory, where they are Images, on the other hand, go directly into long-term memory where they are indelibly etched, okay? So if you're studying, right, even if you have to map it yourself, if it is accompanied by an image, it will go to long-term memory and it will be easier to retain and recall, okay? Words are symbolic. They are representations of images, not images themselves. Okay, so if you create an image for the thing that you are studying, right, it will help you retain the information much better. And also, if you mind mapping gives actual directions, like you can see how things are traveling. And so, again, spatial awareness and memory happen in the hippocampus. So image and direction with mind mapping will help you retain it so much easier. And if you're like, oh, you know, this, the thing I'm studying it does have directions. If you can build different subjects, yes, it absolutely does have directions. If this follows this must happen, like these people invaded, you can mind map anything. I would get it, okay? So, thank you for listening to that entire spiel. But so on the website, use active learning techniques. For many students, passive reading and note-taking is most likely not the most effective way to retain information. Absolutely not. Instead, it is recommended to embrace active learning techniques. Okay, so let me explain why passive reading and note-taking, which are two, if you were to think of, knowledge is heavy, right? Information is heavy. Passive reading would be like walking on the treadmill, no incline, right? And then note-taking would be like deadlifting. So imagine alternating between just walking, no incline, and then deadlifting, okay? Would that be an effective workout that targets anything? No. You'd have some decent heart health and then just ripped arms. But what about your legs, you know? And so the same thing kind of applies to your brain, is that, let me read this. So, passive reading and note-taking is not the most effective way. Yeah, like in terms of mental weightlifting, that is, in terms of, studying, note-taking is kind of like a bench press, depending on the subject, the weight, you could, you really shouldn't rush to a bench press first, or rush at all through a bench press, okay? And so the thing is in the traditional American school system, every single teacher, and teachers, I'm not blaming you, we kind of emphasize note-taking the entire time. Now, note-taking when it comes to your nervous system, right, is like peripheral and central nervous system. And, you need food and all this stuff. And if children don't have access to lunch or breakfast, they're going to the gym, basically, for 8 hours straight. And all they're doing there is they are bench pressing. So, like I said in the beginning, right, the American education system is like a product of capitalism, obviously, and creating like worker bees. And the thing is that bench pressing, deadlifting they're not the same thing, for 8 hours straight, at the end of it, you feel exhausted. Absolutely. Because, your brain does burn calories. Actually, I think I might have skipped that one. Let me go to it. Sorry. Where is it? Where are you, my child? Okay.
What child is this?
Okay. This is from the Scientific American. It's going to talk about temporary mental exhaustion as a genuine common phenomenon. It differs from chronic mental fatigue associated with regular sleep deprivation and some medical disorders. Okay, so we're going to talk about brain power. Although the average adult human brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms, only 2% of total body weight, it demands 20% of our resting metabolic rate. RMR, okay? The total amount of energy our body expends in one very lazy day of activity. 20%, okay, is from your brain. RMR varies from person to person depending on age, gender, size, and health. If we assume an average resting metabolic rate of 1,300 calories, then the brain consumes 260 of those calories just to keep things in order. That's 10.8 calories every hour or 0.18 calories per minute. For comparison's sake, with a little math, we can convert the number into a measure of power. Resting metabolic rate, 1,300 kilocalories, or kcal, the kind used in nutrition. 1,300 kcal over 24 hours equals 54.16 kcal per hour, 15.04 gram calorie per second. 15.04 gram calories per second equals 62.93 joules per second, about 63 watts. 20% of 63 watts equals 12.6 watts. So a typical adult human brain runs on about 12 watts, a fifth of the power required by a standard 60-watt light bulb. Compared with most other organs, the brain is greedy. Pitted against man-made electronics, it is astoundingly efficient. IBM's Watson, the supercomputer that defeated Jeopardy's champion, depends on 90 IBM power, 750 servers, each of which requires around 1,000 watts. Okay, energy travels to the brain via blood vessels in the form of glucose, which is transported across the blood-brain barrier, and is used to produce, ATP, the main currency of chemical energy within cells. So, your brain is not a muscle, but it uses 20% of your, all the calories that you consume in a day. When you concentrate, right, nerves, and sends like little signals, little shocks, right? That's a concentration of energy, okay? And then you need fuel. And the thing is most of the fuel that you need, the tryptophan, the serotonin, 90% comes from what you eat. If you do not eat, then your brain will not think. It will not study. It will not retain. It will not recall. There is no shot in hell. Recall is like, very advanced, okay? And so the thing is you have got to eat if you want to think, and mainly proteins. Okay, let me go back to my thing. Yes, I lost my, what is this? I keep losing it. Okay, so yeah, active learning techniques. And this is the thing, like if you're just deadlifting for 8 hours, and the thing is knowledge is heavy. So if you have different subjects throughout the day and you've already been, or I guess, bench pressing or anything like that for 7 hours straight, and then you got trig at the end of the day, your brain will not be able to lift that load. You're going to think that, I hate math, I'm not good at, no, dude, you just basically, you failed. Like your muscles failed. Not like, you failed. Oh, no. Like it's kind of like watching someone collapse beneath the weight of a all the weight that they're carrying at the gym. And the thing is when we need more gym etiquette when it comes to like studying and like TAs and everything like that, right? If someone asks for help, it's basically like asking for a spotter, and so if you want to be nice, the thing is teaching others is an active learning technique. So being a spotter, teaching others is actually helping you also learn as well, because now you have to like explain the concepts being studied to friends, family, or even imaginary students. Can reinforce your understanding of the information being taken in. Like when I talk, tell you guys what I've learned, it really helps me like process it as well. Because the thing is it's more than just the obvious of if I misread something and you guys give me feedback, you're like, that's not how you pronounce that. And I get that and I totally appreciate it. I'm not in the normal learning context. So I don't usually hear some of these words out loud. And so it's kind of just like you guys are really helpful. But yeah, if you spot someone, you help them learn, you're also helping yourself learn. It's kind of like a joint exercise at the gym. Well, it's like spotting. And, you can practice with questions, go over past papers, solve practice questions or problems related to the material. This approach enhances comprehension, prepares you for the exams, allowing you to repeat and practice until you feel prepared. I know that a lot of athletes probably, the equivalent would probably be like, watching your game back and then your coach giving you like, tips, like see how your foot is like positioned here. Like, so that's kind of, reviewing your tests and your quizzes. It's just to like get you like better form, better answers, like quicker, more efficient on your feet and in your brain. And then there's also summarizing. After reading a chapter or section, write a concise summary of the main points. And the thing is it's the summary helps, but also a summary is like recall as well. And recall, you shouldn't be recalling everything. If you can recall everything, you actually should be studied. So it's just like testing your recall, which is a more difficult skill when it comes to studying. It's a very difficult skill. Okay, then the next one is embrace multisensory learning. It is important to take into consideration that everyone learns differently. Find the best study method. A great study method to consider is multisensory. Like I said, like if you do mind mapping, right? Images are incredibly powerful. Images processed, long-term memory, okay? So words yes. So also this is my ADHD tip. Why this matters. People, if you have a very hard time paying attention, that makes sense, as do I. However, if you get two senses on board, then it's going to be very, very hard for your mind to wander. If you read the book at the same time you listen to the audiobook, or actually when this episode comes out, let me make a note. I'm going to include some resources where you can actually put in your notes so it reads it to you. Now, you could also just do, play them on in the background and kind of just like listen to them. And what's great about that is that it does switch up like it would be like kind of switching, machines at the gym. So like if you just have your own notes read to you, it'd be kind of like doing a lateral raise or like a pull up or something, just to switch up the muscles that you keep using, or, maybe a squat. No, I don't know. It'd be like working on a mat. So yeah, you just have it read it to you, but I'm going to link some resources where it like will read your notes to you, and then follow the notes and listen to them at the same time, because now your eyes and your ears are locked onto this. And so it's multisensory learning. And they also include kinesthetic learning techniques, which is like note cards and touch, right? If you're incredibly tactile, like if you're someone who likes to touch things, if your stimming involves like a lot of like sensory processing, you could be a kinesthetic learner, which means you probably should be writing down more stuff. Okay. So it's just a matter of like, are you a very visual person? Do you enjoy, like you take in a lot of like information when you hear it? Like, do you feel a lot of stuff? So like, is it kind of tie them all together? Okay. Take regular breaks. It's important to remember that long uninterrupted study sessions can lead to burnout and reduced productivity. Instead, it can be suggested to follow techniques such as the Pomodoro technique, which suggests studying for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. After completing 4 cycles, take a more extended break for 15 to 30 minutes. And this entire article will be linked. But again, this is like, I'm trying to draw the equivalent of the gym. This would be like a rest between sets. And so while the thing is when you lift at the gym, the sets, the rests are much shorter because it is like, muscle moving, but your brain also does need a rest between sets. And the thing is if you don't rest between sets, it would be like never resting and just going straight through a workout. And, if you feel like, oh, I don't know if I'll remember that or if I did my best studying, did you take any breaks? Did you take any rests? Someone's not going to feel their best at the gym if they go from machine to machine. Yes. Okay. Review and revise. The practice of frequent revision is vital for long-term memory retention. Make sure you review your notes regularly, particularly before going to bed, which is a great time to ensure you can better retain information. And so repetition is the key to learning. You must repeat it. The reason why journaling works is, like I said in the past, is because it's the same reason why we fail tests. When you write down notes and you do not review them, your brain it's a encoding error. Like your brain will not be able to fetch the notes, and so it cannot review the information. Like when you ruminate, you're supposed to journal it, and so your brain is kind of rest assured, oh, it's recorded somewhere. However, it's on an external processor, so your brain cannot retrieve it. There's retrieval failure. So that's why journaling is good for you, because you will forget, but your brain is like kind of rest assured that it's been written down. However, it's awful for you if you don't review your notes, because the brain cannot retrieve the notes on the external processor. Always review, okay? And then seek help when needed. Don't be afraid to ask cues. But yeah, this has been some learning study techniques. The thing is a lot of people think that they can't learn. And the thing is you were never taught like basically the structure does kind of follow like sort of gym structure. And so if you've ever gone to a gym or if you've ever had PE, you actually do know how to study a little better than you think you do. And the thing is a lot of people think that they're bad at learning. You think that you're bad at learning but you need to seriously consider the context you were learning in, right? You were told that you were bad for being tired here. And your brain muscles were like failing every single day. So of course you're going to feel ashamed, if someone keeps if someone keeps, collapsing under like a barbell weight every single time they go to the gym, will they want to go to the gym? No. And then what would make it worse if everyone, the trainers there were like, you collapsed underneath, you failure, you idiot, so it's the school system wasn't really super helpful. The thing is you are able to learn, and you can learn, and you learn all the time. You learn people's names. Oh, but that's different. Actually, it's not different. It's not, George Washington is not different from the friend that you learned their name, right? It's just like you took the time to sorry, what's your name again? You repeated it, right? And then you learned it. Learning in this environment, just because it's not a school environment doesn't mean that it's not learning, okay? You learn songs all the time. And so I've also made a TikTok on this, is like when you're like reading, a lot of people's first instinct is to write down, like the first line. And then they, keep going, and then they write down the second line. Keep going, write down the third line. That is actually the hardest way to learn something in school. Imagine if you were trying to learn a song like that, right? You were listening, and you listened, and then you wrote down the lyric, and then you played it, and then paused it, and then wrote down the lyric, and then played it, and then paused it, and wrote down the lyric, played it, and paused it, and then wrote down the lyric, played it, and paused it. How long would it take for you to learn a song? When you learn a song, you run through it like a couple times, right? When you watch those listening parties on YouTube, people listen very intently a couple times to this song, and then someone's like, oh, let's look at the notes. Like, let's pull up, the actual lyrics, or like, what was happening? What is she alluding to at this time in her life, right? That's when you get specific, okay? And then, if you want to kind of know how to study, listen to what I said, and then also read all the way through as you would listen to a song all the way through. I know that visual information is different from, hearing things, but also you can learn text information kind of in the same way that you just got to go all the way through, and then you start to make notes, and then you get specific. But I will link this and all the information as to why this is, why this is how you should study. I'm so sorry that I missed finals week. I really am sorry, guys. And also, I do want to, I'm having an issue because a lot of people ask me how I annotate books, and I really want to do a video on that, or a podcast. However, I know a lot of you are listeners, and I want to walk through different color coding. Ooh, I didn't get to color coding. You know what? I actually might make a part 2 to this. I'm sorry, because there is a part for people with dyslexia, and I would like to talk about highlighting and how that does correlate to, like, certain dyslexic fonts. But also, you know what? I will make a distant part 2, because I did want to talk about how research is a craft, like it's an art style. And so in that episode, I will 100% talk about highlighters, and I can also talk about fonts with dyslexia and how they influence our brain. Surprise, surprise, it has to do with direction, right? And creating a visual image. The highlighters create a visual image so you can follow it better. Literally, like green, yellow, pink. It's like kind of like creating an image, and then the sort of, bolded text. Did I just kind of abridge it? I'll make a part 2, but I actually need to read the entirety of that book that I wanted to, so it might be a bit spaced out, but I will do it. And I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you ever like beat yourself up for being tired at school, no, that's capitalism beating you up. You're not. If you feel ashamed because you didn't do well, that's the heavy lifting of it, was the fact that you were fatigued. And so the capitalism. But thank you guys so much for listening. This has been a treat. I love learning. I hope that you enjoyed this. I will make a follow-up, so rest assured, and just rest in general, and make sure to eat your proteins. Okay, thank you guys. This has been Schauer Thoughts. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, and rate me 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Oh, and follow me on Instagram. It's just Sarah Schauer. If you like to review, because I like write my notes ahead of time on my Instagram stories, and people give me feedback, just in case you're one of those who likes to, because I do love feedback. Thank you guys, and all resources are linked below. Bye.